Thank you, Jane. Hello and welcome to our service. We are the Rogue Valley Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, or RUF, in Ashland. My name is Lois Pettinger, and I'm a Unitarian Universalist because back in the 80s, there was a group called the Oregon Citizens Alliance, and they were putting ballot measures on the ballot, attacking gays and lesbians, and especially teachers. And I was a teacher at the time, and especially terrified. And we found there was the fellowship in Corvallis that had surrounded their grounds with red tape, making it a welcoming community for people. And we walked into that fellowship, and we never looked back. And I'm proud to be a Unitarian. And I think in the future we have our work cut out for us. We're going to start today a little bit with a couple of announcements. Sunny?
Good morning, everyone, and guess what I'm here to talk about? Circle dinners. So we still have a couple of spaces left for the dinner that'll take place next Saturday evening. And there's also wait lists listed at the bottom of the ones that are full. And what I'd like you to do, if you can't come to the one on the 30th, but you'd like to be involved in a circle dinner or a circle lunch at some other point in time, sign up on the wait list so I can judge what kind of interest there is. If there's a big interest, then we'll try to do this again in another month or so. If there's not much interest, well then, we'll just say adios. So I hope to see your names on the circle dinner sign-up sheets. It's right in the lobby, right as you walk out and face the office. You'll see the big sign, and you'll see the sign-up sheets. Any questions, please contact me or come and grab me when I'm stuffing my mouth with the yummy goodies, and I'll be happy to answer your questions. Thank you so much.
So I have an announcement for next week. The choir will be singing and we'll be in hats. And so we wanted to extend that invitation to everybody in the congregation. It's Easter bonnets, etc. So if any of you or all of you want to get a hat on your head, whether it's an Easter bonnet, a gardening hat, Guy already has his ready, a fedora, any of the above, whatever comes to mind or is available, put your hat on. And folks that are going to be wearing hats, kind of stay in the back, and the choir will sing you in, and so we can have a little parade of hatted people. Next week.
That includes the men also, is that
You
correct?
betcha.
Absolutely. I just wanted to make sure. We are so happy to welcome you to our service, both online and in person. We want to especially thank the members of the stream team who are helping make this online service happen, and the members of the neighborhood team who welcome the on-site congregation. If you are a newcomer, we invite you to sign up on our mailing list on roof.org. You will receive a weekly email that gives you all the information you need to make your decision about whether you'd like to join us on Sunday morning, on-site or online. You will also learn about other great things going on at Roof. We are so glad to have you with us for this service. We invite you to join us in our mission: embracing diversity, empowering connection, and engaging in the work. We begin each service by acknowledging that our building is built on land that began as the home of the Cow Creek, Umpqua, Takelma, Shasta, and Lagawa people. We remind ourselves that Indigenous people are part of our communities and continue to experience the effects of colonization. We are committed to fighting for the worth and dignity of Indigenous people, both in our community and around the world. We are also committed to work for a world in which the lives, work, bodies, dreams, and leadership of Black people are honored and respected. We do all this by putting our words, values, and principles into action every day for justice and the common good. These services are a part of that work. Welcome and thank you for being with us.
In a world filled with the darkness of ignorance, let us bring the light of reason In a world filled with the darkness of despair, may we share the light of hope. In a world filled with the darkness of hate, let us shine the light of love.
Good morning. I'm Julie Crooks, the music director here at Roof. And for those of you who might be visiting today or here for the first time, you would usually see our minister, Reverend Sean, up in the pulpit. But as is traditional in UU churches, we often have lay-led services, and today is one of those. Today's speaker is Irv Lubliner, who some of you may know as an instructor at SOU's Osher Lifelong Learning Institute, or OLLI. Irv has published his mother's writings and shared them with over 80 other OLLI campuses nationwide and committed to bringing her stories to the largest possible audience. Both of Irv's parents survived the Holocaust, and the stories she wrote are a testament to their strength, perseverance, and indomitable spirit. You will hear some of this today, but we have also scheduled a longer, more intimate time for discussion 2 weeks from today, April 7th, right here at Roof from 2 to 4 o'clock p.m. More information will come out in the News for Note reminding us, and there are little reminder notes that may have come out with your order of worship for today, and there are also some flyers available. I think you can probably pick up those during the coffee hour. Please join Irv on April 7th and feel free to bring your friends. As you can see, there's plenty of room. Now please join me in our opening song today, which is number 1 in your gray hymnal.
Good morning. I'm Bill Montfort, and with me is Roger Howe to light the anti-racism candle. Let me tell you briefly how I came to join the anti-racism study group here at Roof. My wife and I joined the Peace Corps in 1966, and we were placed in a school for orphans in the slums of Nairobi, Kenya. We insisted that we be housed on the school grounds to have greater contact with the African community. We were only members of the faculty that had done that. So we were given one side of a simple 2-family house, which we shared with a Kenyan teacher, his wife, and 3 children for 3 years. In our 3rd year, our daughter was born, and we became even more interesting to the neighbors, who were all Kenyans. After Kenya, I taught in a typically white suburban high school in New Jersey, but my wife worked at Planned Parenthood with many African American co-workers and clients. Together we socialized in very racially mixed groups. When we moved to Ashland, we became active at Roof, but as my wife's dementia developed, I needed to spend more time as her caregiver. After she was placed full-time in a memory facility, I joined the anti-racism study group. On an intellectual level, I had some knowledge of the racial history of our country. A good friend from Peace Corps days had studied as an exchange student at Fisk University, an historically black university, where she came to know John Lewis as a classmate. John became a famous leader in the civil rights movement with Martin Luther King Jr., as well as serving as a congressman for 17 years. My friend's activities in the civil rights movement led me to want to know and feel more about my anti-racism issues. I would like to close with 2 quotes from John Lewis. Today we have come a long distance. We have made a lot of progress. That cannot be denied. You cannot dispute the fact that our country is so different from 50 years ago, but we still have problems. There are too many people that have been left out and left behind, and they are African American, they are white, they are Latino, Asian Americans, and Native Americans. And a second quote with a phrase that I think many of you will recognize. We have come a long way in America because of Martin Luther King. He led a disciplined, nonviolent revolution under the rule of law, a revolution of values, a revolution of ideas. We've come a long way, but we still have a distance to go before all our citizens embrace the idea of a truly interracial democracy, what I like to call the beloved community, a nation at peace and with itself.
It has become our practice to light a candle each week for peace. We take this moment to call to mind our commitment to peace of mind, peace in our homes, peace in our communities, and peace in the world. We pray for the power to be gentle, the strength to be forgiving, the patience to be understanding, and the endurance to accept the consequences of holding on to what we believe to be right. May we put our trust in the power of good to overcome evil and the power of love to overcome hatred. Amen, Ashe, and blessed be.
kids, but we're not going to have, oh, sorry, we are not going to have a children's story today, but we will still sing you out if you want to, if you're going to your classes, let's all sing you out. May your minds be open to learning. May your lips bring truth into the world. May your hearts show love and good to the work of justice. As you go your way in peace. As you go your way in peace.
This is a reading by Sophia Lyon Foz. Some beliefs are like walled gardens. They encourage exclusiveness and the feeling of being especially privileged. Other beliefs are expansive and lead the way into wider and deeper sympathies. Some beliefs are divisive, separating the saved from the unsaved, friends from enemies. Other beliefs are bonds in a universal humanity, where sincere differences beautify the pattern. Some beliefs are like blinders, shutting off the power to choose one's own direction. Other beliefs are like gateways, opening wide vistas for exploration. Some beliefs weaken a person's selfhood. They blight the growth of resourcefulness. Other beliefs nurture self-confidence and enrich the feelings of personal worth. We are here today to help us choose which of these beliefs we call our own.
Please join me in our opening hymn today in your teal hymnal number, oh, I guess it's not our opening hymn, it's our centering hymn. I was so engrossed I lost track. 1012, When I Am Frightened. Please rise in body or spirit.
Quiet
Good morning. Before I share my prepared reflections with you, I've been asked to announce that there will be a group led by Adrian Simmons in the library. Is it referred to as the library? After the service, an opportunity for you to share your reflections about this service, anything that struck you in any particular way that you might want to share, or hear other people's reflections. It is a blessing and an honor to have this opportunity to be with and share with you today. There are some words that always, or almost always, cause us to have warm, positive thoughts. They include words like wisdom, kindness, compassion, trust. If you want to see other examples, just look at the banners hanging on the wall, stating the principles that bring us together in fellowship. There are other words that always, or almost always, cause us to have negative thoughts. Examples include disappointment, burden, cruelty, and worthless. During my 30 years of teaching first-year algebra, I often ask students to comment about what came to their minds when they heard the word discrimination. As you might expect, they focused on the negative connotations associated with discrimination in the workplace, housing, and education, discrimination based on skin color, sexual orientation, or other personal characteristics. I asked them to reconsider, pointing out the value of discriminating between the red and green traffic lights, the importance of discriminating between one musical key and another when joining with others to create harmony, the benefits of discriminating between the various light blue Priuses in a parking lot so you get into your own car and not someone else's. In case you're wondering how this connects to algebra, there is a mathematical quantity called the discriminant, and it allows us to quickly tell whether an equation with a second power has 0, 1, or 2 solutions. You can breathe a sigh of relief now. The math lesson's over. Let's turn to the word anger. It might be one of those words that immediately cause us to think, oh, that's bad. But aren't we in our right minds when we feel anger towards someone molesting children, especially if it's our children? What about those situations in which we see injustice and join with others to constructively let it be known that it angers us? Wasn't anger justified when blacks sitting at a lunch counter were refused service and spat upon? An anger that fueled protest that ultimately led to changes in civil rights laws? Psychologist Jade Wu asks an important question, writing, "Is anger a destructive force of violence?" She answers her own question saying, no. Violence is a destructive force of violence. Anger is a motivating force, of which violence is only one of many options for expressing it. Is anger a poison that ruins our health? No, she says. It's a natural, valid emotion that responds to threats and injustice, and if expressed in a reasonable way, does not harm our health. In 2018, I attended a reunion of second-generation Holocaust survivors, people like me whose parents were victims of Nazi cruelty. About 25 of us milled around, socializing with each other, not really talking about the shared experience that had brought us together. When the hostess asked if we'd like to get together again the following year, there was a unanimous positive response, and I approached her asking, next year, could we spend a portion of our time talking about what it was like to grow up as the child of Holocaust survivors? She explained that this would not happen the following year because about 1/4 of the attendees had told her that they would not attend if there was any attempt to organize discussion. She explained that they grew up with parents that were so angry that their bitterness became their children's bitterness, and that now, as adults, those children would rather not think about the households in which they were raised. I think we can agree that in this case, the anger, though initially quite justifiable, was having a lasting negative impact on those parents, one passed on to their children. I felt blessed that my own parents, who had every right to feel hurt and anger, decided, and I believe decided is a key word, to turn the page and not let themselves be defined by their Holocaust experiences, not to dwell on their pasts at the risk of tainting their futures and mine. I'd like to share with you one of my mother's stories. It is called The Choice, and I think it describes a pivotal moment in her life, the moment in which she decided, there's that key word again, decided, not to spend the rest of her life dwelling on the anger she felt. I think it illustrates what I call seeding forgiveness. The Choice by Felicia Bornstein Lubliner. I could hear the clamoring noise long before I saw the crowd appear on the village road. Shouts, jeers, laughter, and lively sounds of accordion music reverberated in the clear morning air. An odd procession made its way toward the camp, and as they came nearer, I began to recognize familiar shapes and faces. There was Andre in the lead, with a broad grin on his face, playing his ever-present accordion, and right behind him, a group of men surrounding a lone female figure marched somberly and grimly, and all about them a multitude of grotesque-looking women, my fellow inmates. With their eyes shining and big in their thin faces, their shaven, naked skulls, and bony limbs protruding from the ill-fitting rags, they looked like giant swarming insects. The crowd grew larger and larger as more women came out of the barracks, joined the group, and merged with it. It seemed as if they were sucked into a growing, wriggling body with a common emotion on its countless faces and common scorn in its raised fists. A mob. The chorus of voices rose into deafening din as the crowd approached the barracks door where I stood watching and waiting. It was then that I saw the captive in their midst. I looked at Matilda again and again as if to make sure that my eyes were not deceiving me. It was almost impossible to imagine that this creature before me was the same Matilda I had known for many months, Frau Obersturmführerin Matilda Bauer, in command of the camp. We called her the monster, and how well she deserved that name. How well she had used her power to make our lives a miserable existence, and how proud she seemed to be of her position. Her power and pride were gone now. They had disappeared overnight, as did the emblems and swastikas from the village buildings where now white flags of surrender were fluttering in the breeze. Everything was different this beautiful spring morning, and it was a transformed Matilda I saw before me. Instead of the despised green uniform with the insignia of terror, she now wore a shabby house dress. A pair of worn slippers replaced the shiny black boots. Her cherished peroxide blonde locks were shorn off her head, revealing black hair roots and ridiculously big ears. I should have liked to watch her face when the cold metal of the clippers had touched her scalp. Had she felt as I did when it was done to me? The new Matilda looked almost like one of us, her former victims. Almost, but for her well-fed, plump body and chubby cheeks, which were still in sharp contrast with our skeleton-like figures. But it was she who was afraid now. Fear contorted her thin mouth and rounded her watery blue eyes. She was whining and begging for mercy, the monster whom I had known to shout orders, threats, and insults in a voice filled with contempt and hatred. "I just followed orders," she kept whimpering. But only a few days ago, she had had us whipped for not having worked fast enough. She had given the orders to the guards and had stood there grinning, counting the strokes. She had known we were weakened by hunger. She had known it well. For it was she who had withheld our food for days for no reason at all, and how she had enjoyed her fine meals while she forced us to look on with nothing to swallow but our saliva. And only last night, just a few hours ago, before they fled in the dark, she and her faithful guards made sure that we would be blown up in the giant fireworks, all 600 of us, defenseless, starving women, to be sacrificed in a final gesture of loyalty to their fallen gods. They would have succeeded had it not been for Pierre and his friends, our friends. These were the French prisoners from a nearby camp with whom we had worked side by side. We were never allowed to speak to them, but we had known them to be friends, even if only by their encouraging smiles. And last night it was Pierre who first came with the wonderful news of freedom. He didn't just come in, he burst into our barracks with triumph on his face and a heavy sack on his shoulders, a giant atlas with 100 pounds of sugar on his back. Spellbound, we watched him as he placed his burden in the middle of the barracks and then stepped aside with a gallant bow, saying, "Voila, vive la liberté!" We gathered around and dipped our hands into the contents of the sack, tasting the sweet, sparkling sugar. We ate it by the handful, licking our fingers and smacking our lips, trying to saturate ourselves with its sweetness and that first exhilarating hour of freedom. Then the others came, all the people from the French barracks, the Italian, the Greek, the men, the women. And for the first time, we talked to each other and shook hands. There were no more armed guards to keep us apart. They came with gifts of food, clothing, soap, and other unheard of luxuries. They came with accordions and harmonicas and brought song and laughter into our grim surroundings. They brought us friendship and the gift of life, for it was Pierre and a group of his men who searched the barracks for explosives, and we watched, breathless and tense, as the wires and dynamite set up for our destruction came out bit by bit, stick after stick. We had refused to seek safety outside while these men endangered their lives for us. After what seemed an eternity, their job was completed, and then, voila! Vive la liberté! We shouted together again and again. Long live freedom! We shouted in a multitude of languages, and the barracks walls resounded with the words they had never heard. We sang together prayers of thanksgiving, hymns, anthems, and folk songs, while the music came louder and louder, livelier and livelier. Soon dancing began, and those of us too weak to join in watched in elation while eating like fiends, and everything had the sweetness of sugar, the sweetness that will stay in my mind forever as the taste of freedom. God, it was like a wonderful dream. It was unbelievable, and we wept and we laughed, eager to forget the agony of suffering. But how can one forget? I began to feel terribly alone in this happy crowd. The futility of it all seemed unbearable. The door to freedom was open at last. There were no fixed bayonets between me and the beautiful world outside, but I had no home to go back to and no future to look forward to. For almost 6 years, I had struggled to survive, to see the enemy defeated, and now, in the midst of the victory celebration, I suddenly realized that I had outlived my parents, my sisters, my brothers, and old friends. I was only 23, but I felt old and filled with bitterness. Everything I loved was buried under a mountain of ashes in the crematory of Auschwitz. There was only hate left now and thoughts of revenge. Was there any other reason for living than to avenge the lost lives, the inhuman suffering, an eye for an eye? Oh God, how many eyes! I looked at Matilda and I saw a quivering, contemptible creature before me. I looked hard. She was the embodiment of evil. How I hated her. I was drowning in hate. It dominated me as it dominated the crowd that had gone with Pierre in the morning and hunted her down in the cellar where she was hiding, as it dominated the crowd that gathered around them when they returned with her to the camp. Pierre and a few elder women from the camp were conferring on the side, trying to decide what to do with Matilda. Then they gave her a mop and a pail and told her to clean up the mess left after the celebration. She began to scrub. She went down on her knees and scrubbed, and the crowd followed her everywhere, in the barracks, the kitchen, the latrines, and Andre with his accordion accompanied her, playing her beloved songs, Deutschland über alles and Lili Marlene, over and over again. He played incessantly, and the crowd loved it. It was good to see the enemy humbled, the proud Matilda on her knees. Hating was so easy, and hating with a crowd has a special appeal. I was fascinated as I looked at the spectacle. I was too fascinated to take an active part in it. I just watched it first, and the picture I saw has been haunting my nightmares ever since. The faces around me were like a blurred moving mass. The voices floated in the vacuum of my brain. I was numb, devoid of all connection with feeling and thought. The only reality was hate, and Matilda. She was on the floor sobbing as she scrubbed obediently foot by foot, just as I did under her rule. But that wasn't all. That wasn't all. For suddenly someone produced a whip and began to beat her. I heard her scream, and it sounded just as we had screamed under her lashes. It seemed all so easy, an eye for an eye, a scream for a scream, and then I felt the whip pressed into my hand, and I heard a hoarse voice urging, "It's your turn now. Beat her." I felt cold sweat trickling down my back. My hand was limp. I couldn't move. Strike her hard," repeated the voice, and I heard the others snicker. "Do it! Are you a coward? Have you forgotten your parents? Have you forgotten how your people died?" The fires of the Auschwitz smokestack seemed to burn inside me. I was gasping for breath, and through the black smoke before my eyes, I saw Matilda. I raised my hand with the whip in it, the very same riding crop she had used on my back. I raised my hand, and with all the strength I had, I brought it down on her. "This is for my father." My voice sounded thick. A swish of the whip in the air, an ugly smacking sound, and there was Matilda's flesh on the other end. Revenge is sweet. Where had I heard that? Again, deliberately and with great effort, I struck. "This is for my mother," I heard myself say. My throat felt tight and hot, and a bitter taste was on my tongue. "Go on," urged the crowd. "Strike again for your brothers and sisters." Oh, yes. I had a long way to go for my brothers, my sisters, the many friends, and my own mixed-up life, all because of this louse and vermin like her. The lust to hurt and destroy gave me strength. I could be just as hateful and brutal as they could. It only depended on which side of the whip one was. "Ach du lieber Augustine" came gaily from Andre's accordion, and excitement rose to a frenzy. The crowd was waiting for the next blow, and down at my feet, Matilda was waiting too. I met her eyes, and for a sickening instant, there was this silent understanding between us. We were on an equal level now. I felt bound to her. The thought made me hesitate. "Come on," the spectators screamed. "This is what we've been waiting for." This? The answer came from my very guts. I flung the whip into a corner. No. I tried to fight nausea, and I welcomed the tears that suddenly streamed down my face. I needed that curtain between me and the crowd. Finding my way out of the tight circle, I heard their contempt. "What's the matter with you, you weakling?" I didn't stop to explain. It took me a long time to understand it myself. Recently, a childhood neighbor about 2 years younger than I am contacted me to share something he experienced as a teenager, a story involving my mother shortly before she died. With me off to college, my parents had hired him to do some work in the garden. He had an opportunity to interact with my mother, who he knew to be a concentration camp survivor from what he had learned from his own parents. He asked to see the number tattooed on my mother's arm which she showed him. He had been watching the TV show Combat, which covered the grim lives of a squad of American soldiers fighting the Germans during World War II. Based on that TV watching experience, he stated, "I hate Germans." In response, my mother put her hand on his shoulder and said, "You need to let go of the hate. Hate is what caused the entire mess we call the Holocaust." While she may not have forgiven the Nazis for what they did to her family and millions of others, she was sprinkling seeds of forgiveness by channeling her emotions into positive actions. Think about all the conflict in the world today that is fueled by the knowledge that one group's ancestors had somehow wronged those of another group. So much harm is being done to avenge events of the past. Imagine if all that energy was funneled into mending fences and working together to build a better, more peaceful world for future generations. The process begins when hearts are open and seeds of forgiveness are planted. There is a Cherokee legend that I had never heard until 3 days ago, and I'd like to close with it. As a tribal elder was passing wisdom to a young listener, he described a battle between two wolves within each of us, one good, one evil, using the battle as a metaphor for inner conflict. When the youngster asked, "Which wolf will win?" the grandfather answered, "Whichever one you feed." When we've been hurt, anger can cause us to cultivate weeds of vengeance and bitterness. But let us strive to acknowledge our feelings and then, though it may be difficult and take time, plant seeds of forgiveness, replacing those weeds with a garden of grace, inner peace, and hope for a brighter future. Let us keep the good wolf inside well fed and spread seeds of forgiveness everywhere we can. Thank you.
Let us take a deep breath. And now, holding in our hearts the gratitude for all that we share here and work toward within our own community at Roof, we take an offering to support the mission and the work of our congregation. Your generosity provides the vast majority of the financial support for the program, services, outreach, and staffing of our congregation. Your giving is immediately put to work putting our principles into action in our community and beyond. If you are joining us online, you can give in one of several ways. You can mail a check to 87 4th Street, Ashland, Oregon, 97520. You can go to and near your, I think it's tinyural.com, Roof and offering, and follow the instructions there. Or you can text a $sign in the amount you'd like to donate to 541-229-4229. If you need support, please contact Reverend Sean using the form on roof.org. We will do our best to help. We will now gratefully receive the morning offering. Thank you for your generosity, and thank you for the music. We are going to be doing a little singing.
Indeed. Please join me in your gray hymnal again, and we're going to sing number 6, I think. Yes. It is, yes. Just as long as I have breath. Please rise and body your spirit.
Closing words are from Ma Teresa Castillo Gallardo. We cast not our eyes below. We say to ourselves, we are how we came. Wounded from struggles, triumphant in our survival, entitled by birthright to belong to this, the only humankind there is, to say I am included. I belong. I am here, and I will be and do. I will breathe joy into desolation. I will breathe peace into conflict. I will breathe life into destruction, and I will be the earth I wish to see. I am growth and joy and hope.